Has it done our state any good having 16 years of Republican governors? We're dead last in job growth. We have the highest electric rates in the nation. Our infrastructure routinely is rated D or D minus. We contribute less to infrastructure, highway maintenance as a percentage of total cost than any other state in the nation. Has any of that stuff worked for us? I don't think so. I think it's time for a different direction.
Going back to the issue of taxes, and you and I disagree on this point here as it relates to businesses, the unemployment fund.
You know what? We're not so far off on the unemployment fund. I know what you're going to ask. Should we have adjusted that earlier?
Well, we have a problem with it right now that's going to result, in my opinion, in an immediate tax increase on every employer in the state to rebuild that fund and pay back what we've had to borrow over the last 19 months.
I know, I hear you, Ray. I don't think our positions are so far apart. Should we have shifted some of it at least on a marginal basis? Maybe not the whole additional cost, but not digging the hole so deep. I think there's good argument for that. Are there employers who are never going to lay off their employees in the state of Connecticut? Of course there are, because their businesses are prosperous and doing well. And having a sound unemployment system, a compensation system, is actually good for business in the long run. So, you know, where I think that all falls down is once you get back to fully funding, then you also have to be willing to cut back. And then what I would also say to you is the magnitude, and I think I've said this to you once before, I think the magnitude of the downturn is what was so breathtaking. And the length of the downturn is what's so breathtaking. I mean, this is now by double the longest recession we've had since the Great Depression. And at one point, 22% of value had disappeared in this country. We've stabilized. Maybe in some parts of the state, our country, we're digging our way out of it. I think other states are going to have this problem, but I think we probably made our problem deeper.
In addition to making the executive order on the gap financing or accounting process your first order of business, do you also hit the ground running January 5th with a plan to address this unemployment problem, whether it be borrowing to cover the expenses that need to be covered, and then somehow of raising the revenues to solve the problem?
It is absolutely an issue that will be undertaken in a transition. Transition that, if I'm successful and I'm elected, begins on November 3rd. I know what a transition would look like. I know some people that I'd love to have involved in that. Some of those from the corporate community, some of those from the HR side, who I think are important minds to bring to that discussion. And yeah, I think unemployment, the stability, the long-term stability of Connecticut's unemployment insurance program is very important. I don't want anyone watching this to think that we're the only people in this hole. This bad policy was pursued in other states. Sorry.
Yeah. Campaign finance reform. You are taking advantage of the public funding for your campaign. Tom Marsh isn't, not because he wouldn't like to, but because of the hurdles that he has to go over. And as a result of that, there are organizations conducting debates between you and Mr. Foley, and he's being left out because he's not deemed to be viable. How do you, as governor, address what is basically an inequity, an unfairness affecting citizens who want to be part of a solution and make this state great, like you do?
Yeah, well, I think that this is not a perfect system by any stretch of the imagination, and I think we do have to look at it. We have to look at it in light of some of the case law that developed by Bush-appointed judges who decided that foreign corporations need to be treated as citizens of the state of the United States for the purpose of expressing their rights of free speech. I think we got to look at that and figure out how that works in Connecticut. But I also think this third party or other party situation deserves some attention. I think there needs to be a threshold. I don't think we can go out and give money to anybody who says they want to run. And Mr. Marsh may not be the best example in the sense that he first pursued his own party's nomination, and upon learning that he couldn't get that, so he was within that system trying to get that party's nomination, then bailed on that process when he learned that he couldn't get it. I'm not sure that's the same thing as, well, let's see, both Maine and Connecticut have had unaffiliated governors or third-party governors in the last 20 years. Lowell Weicker here, and I'm drawing a blank on the governor up in Maine. That's very different than what they did, which was to go out from the get-go and build the infrastructure and devote the time to raising amounts of money. So I think we need a system that has a test, but I think the test is probably too high. But I don't think he's the right example. I think our own history in Connecticut with third party or other New England states with third party is the right measurement. We should look at those.
You mentioned port development a little.
Port development is one of the areas where Mr. Foley and I couldn't be further apart.
Well, I don't know how much aware you are of a proposal that's now being put forth here in Eastern Connecticut. And there's a presentation on it coming up near the end of the month here. There's a group, it started up in Palmer, Massachusetts, and it's the Palmer Coalition. And what they worked with both Amherst and Storrs, and they are now expanding it. They have an idea of a commuter and freight passenger rail service that would run from the Port of New London to Brattleboro, Vermont. Mm-hmm. Palmer seems to be the hub of freight service in Massachusetts. The tracks are already there.
Yeah, that line is used.
16 colleges along that route of the proposal, and probably at about 1/10 the cost of the New Haven, Hartford, Springfield line, which the state has now committed itself to $250 million for a project that's going to cost $1 billion. Is the New Haven, Hartford, Springfield line that important that it could conceivably take all other transportation projects and put them on hold because of the expense? No,
it's not that important that it should be allowed to do that. And I think part of the problem in Connecticut when it comes to big transportation projects is that this project in New Haven, $2.5 billion project, has been used as a way of defeating everything for such a long period of time, which was wrong. Yes, it's a $2.5 billion project. It's spread over 17 years. It was used as a reason to continually lower the state's contribution to infrastructure investment having to do with rail and highway systems. It really was. And why did they do that? So they'd have that money to spend someplace else. That's bad public policy. So whether it's, I happen to be a supporter because I think in the long run, the New Haven to Vermont run, which is really what it is, it's not just Springfield, makes a lot of sense. And that could become a major employment commuting contact as well as used for other purposes. And Amtrak having better and more regular service. But it should never, if it goes forward, be used as an excuse to defeat other important projects. We need to be more like every other state, and we need to prioritize our investments. And I think in a state that is as transportation constrained as ours, you'd be hard pressed to find too many things other than the maintenance of the safety net, other than the maintenance of a good public educational system, that's more important than transportation in Connecticut. Because we know they've been teaching something called just-in-time delivery in MBA programs in the United States for over 30 years. And that's the concept that if you have a factory, you get a piece, you improve it, you get it out, and if you can do that all in one day, you're really a winner, but you want to keep as short of stocks as possible. Let's go back to this Palmer. It's coming back to me. I have heard of this. And I have had discussions about that line that goes down to actually there's a line on either side. Right. One used more frequent than the other. The primary line going into New London, and I guess it's on the eastern side of the river, The primary user downstream is Pfizer.
Right.
So there aren't a whole lot of trains. Talking to the guys at the Coast Guard, that goes through the Coast Guard, excuse me, it goes through the subbase.
Yeah.
You know, it's once or twice a week, a day. When there was more importation of wood product into the harbor, it was more frequent as well. And there is a rail contact to the harbor. You know, we have to take a real look at that and figure out how do we maximize it. And if it really does have real possibilities as a commuter and freight line, I'm all for it. And if you're right and they're right that it could be done for as little money as we're talking about, we should be looking at it.